Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Mornings with Greg. I am your host, Greg Spero, but we have a very awesome co-host today who I'll introduce in a moment. Today is the Bass Bash episode of Mornings with Greg. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have some of these people on. First, this episode is brought to you by Spirit Fingers. There are 50 copies of the new Spirit Fingers vinyl available at spiritfingers.live/Greg that will be signed by me. So you can go to that link down there. And the Spirit Fingers is a group with Hadrian Farad, Mike Micheal, Dario Chiazzolino, and myself that Jazz Times calls high performance post-bop with a flash of fusion. So you can check that out. Anyway, if you can't tell in my voice, I'm actually a little nervous because we have such heavy bass legends in the house today. And so I'm going to, without further ado, go to our next guest panel screen, and I'm going to unmute. Cheryl's messaging me saying, unmute us. Yes, I know. And I'm going to unmute myself. I'm going to unmute everybody else. And now, everybody, I would like to introduce you to Cheryl Simister Masterson, our guest host today.
Yes. Yes. Good.
Cheryl, how are you doing?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm good.
Good morning.
Good. Yeah. And as Greg said, I am Cheryl Kay, and I'm guest hosting on Mornings with Greg. It is, a little bit past 11 o'clock here in the Empire State, which is New York, a little past 8 o'clock in the Golden State, which is California, which is where Greg is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for the past 2 months, pianist, composer, and producer Greg Spero has been inviting folks involved in jazz and improvisational music to discuss a myriad of topics of the day. So here we are. Mentored by the legendary keyboardist Herbie Hancock, Greg was the longtime pianist for pop singer-songwriter Halsey, with whom he appeared on such national TV shows as Saturday Night Live and Ellen. Greg is also an alumnus of the Miles Davis Electric Band. He's the mastermind behind the rhythmically charged, groove-oriented, and genre-bending Spirit Fingers. The quartet features, and you'll have to correct me on this, Greg, if I get the names wrong. It's Max Girl, drummer Mike Micheal, guitarist Dario Chiazzolino, and their new self-titled release is out now at spiritfingers.live/music. I'm the host of the Jazz Disturbance and the Wednesday WGXC morning show on WGXC 90.7 FM in Hudson, New York. WGXC is a community radio station, one of 3 programs owned and operated by Wave Farm, a nonprofit arts organization driven by experimentation and the broadcast media and the airwaves. Now, to introduce our panel for today, we have Ron Carter.
Woo!
Buster Williams. Michael League. And these 3 gentlemen are from New York City. We also have Marlene Rosenberg.
Woo!
And Junius Paul. These 2 are from Chi-Town, Chicago, Illinois.
Chicago, hometown.
Welcome to everyone. Welcome to friends, family, fans, students, and the rest of y'all to this panel. And as we go along, our panelists will talk about themselves and some of the interesting things that they're doing at this time. But I thought I'd start off with the question, since we're all sheltering in place. When's the last time that everyone has performed? Why don't we start with Mr. Williams?
I can't even remember. when did we shut down? I think sometime in March, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had done something in February and January, and then week by week, each new month was shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, sometime in March. Okay, so everything in April was shut down, and then in April, everything in May was shut down, and then in May, everything in June and July, and today, I just got some emails that some important stuff in August is now shut down.
Mm.
So, and the person said, "We may become the most famous subway band in history." You know, so I mean, this is an extraordinary time, but it forces us to find new ways to do things, and that's what I had to really try to impress on all of my students, that you know, by nature we're supposed to be creative people,
Mm-hmm.
and what we're trying to do is a creative endeavor. And so now more than ever, it becomes very clear that this creative endeavor is not just relegated to what we call our professions or what we want to be our professions, but life itself. So I'm finding it very interesting.
Mm.
Mr. Carter?
My last gig was in Poland, March 2. And I've practiced about 8 minutes since then and doing really well.
Marlene? Oh, she's still, I
She's
see a
muted.
mute
Is Marlene still muted?
on her.
Oh,
Yeah,
let me.
You're muted.
Marlene is still muted.
Marlene. Oh, Marlene, you need to
All right, I'll
unmute
go-
yourself.
Sorry.
Oh, there it
We're
goes.
fighting over
There
a
you go.
Yeah. Oh. I think February, but yeah, it's a ways back. What are we in?
Yeah.
May.
May. Yeah.
Hey, now.
We're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really strange. I had a mini rehearsal online with a tap dancer yesterday, and we're trying to do, it's National Tap Dance Day next Monday. So we're trying to do an online performance. Kind of fun. It's with Jumani Taylor.
Oh,
You know
Jumani.
Jumani.
Yes.
Yeah.
Junius and I worked with Jumani in the Chicago Human Rhythm Project back in Chicago.
Right. Yeah. So we're trying to do that, come up with some ideas, mute him, mute me, don't mute both of us. I don't know. See what we come up with.
Well, you know, the software is being developed to do that actually live. If you're in the same city, to be able to play together in sync without noticeable latency. That's like almost there. Yeah. I've been talking to people who've been developing it, and it's so close. It's so close.
Oh, good to hear.
Yeah.
Please let me know any information you have on that.
I will. I'm also going to do an episode on it when it's available and people can use it easily and just download it and use it. I'm going to do a full episode talking about that.
Can't wait. Yeah, man.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Junius?
So my last like live gig or any gig of that matter, I was fortunate to be able to go out with little R&R. I had a couple of gigs in Honolulu with McCraven. And what was that? The end of February and the beginning of March, like February 29th, actually, we had a show.
Wow, sweet.
Yeah, so I was able to at least, do that. Then I flew back to Chicago, and that's when things started to shut down. Not long after that, and I was supposed to be at the Blue Note in New York at the end of March, and that got canceled. And then it was just like, and then stuff in the middle of the month, and I had a couple of gigs with Roscoe Mitchell that ended up getting canceled at the beginning of April. And from there, it just started going into the summer festivals, and like Mr. Williams said, into the late summer. And even I had a fall tour that just got pushed to the spring of 2021 in Europe. So, you know, the ball continues to roll.
Yes, yes, yes. And Michael.
There you go.
Can I unmute you, Michael?
Muted.
There you go. Okay, you're unmuted.
Thanks, Greg. I was in Holland in the beginning of March, the first week of March, working with like doing a week-long residency with a youth orchestra, and preparing them to do a tour of their own. And on the day before the first concert, actually, they got the word that the whole trip had been canceled, which, you know, for us, having a tour canceled is a drag, but I think when you're like 22 or 23 and you've been working, you know, for a whole week trying to develop all this material for a gig, I think it stings a little. I don't know, it stings a lot. So it was really kind of heartbreaking to see. That was my first kind of vision into all the stuff that was going on, was like looking at it through their eyes. But, you know, yeah, like everybody's been saying, it's like we're gonna, you know, this situation is not just going to go away soon, you know, and I think we have to be as creative with our kind of like how to climb out of it as we are with our, you know, artistic selves. But also I live in Spain now, so that's actually where I am, even though I was in New York for 10 years. And we just got word today that June 21st, the country is going 100% back to what they're calling the new normality. So open borders, open travel between regions within the country, all bars and restaurants open inside. Because right now it's like, if you have a restaurant with a terrace, you can have it at 50% capacity. And, you know, they have all these different phases that they've been kind of advancing through. So I think maybe the reality for us moving forward is that while the US will probably be screwed for a long time due to obvious leadership issues, I think our next gigs, everybody in this chat, will be happening in other places, even while we're not allowed to play in the US, as long as those places will let us in with our passports.
Right. So go ahead, Marlene, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, sorry. I'm just vocally reacting.
Got it. Being away from live performance for such a lengthy time, what perspective have you been given on your playing technique? You know, have you learned new things being, you know, alone? Junius?
I've been working on, really more than anything, to be honest with you, harmony structure, and studying a lot of scores these days, you know, because I have the time to really, in one sitting, you know, break some things down and learn some things. And, you know, with that comes studying the history of different, even jazz scores, classical scores, and doing a lot of stuff on Rhodes as well as bass. I've been to Rhodes here, so I've just been, you know, taking a lot of the harmonies I've either been studying or hearing in different types of recordings and taking it to the keyboard and just really trying to get inside a lot of things and just kind of work them out in there. And then, you know, like I said, apply those things to the bass. And I'm working on, obviously, technique and all that too. I mean, that's all a part of the practice regimen, you know, but just really trying to go deeper into the instrument and go deeper into music, just be a student, you know.
Marlene?
Oh, so Marlene's been having muting issues. Wait, let's see if I can unmute her again. Yeah, Marlene, you need to unmute yourself there. I don't have that. There it is.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, sorry.
It's okay.
I'll stand away from the mouse. I've been practicing fundamentals on the bass. I've really been doing a lot of online teaching, which is coming to a screeching halt. I can't say that in terms of the university teaching that I've been doing. So fundamental lines, working on the piano a little bit, trying to get my piano chops together, tunes. Much like Junius, I love that. Studying the harmony of things, how things move, working on bass lines. I have assignments from Maestro Ron Carter that I've been fortunate enough to be able to work on. Very fundamental things, but very important things. Yeah. So looking to write some new things for the next album. I'm being as optimistic as possible. And looking for interesting collaborations with people too, obviously.
Yeah. I think I want to interject there. Well, actually, before I interject with the idea, I want to let everybody know that I'm watching the comments, and I'll draw from the comments to do questions a little bit later in this episode. And if you're commenting on gregspero.live, you can see the comments on the right-hand side of the screen. So it's people, Brandy's on there, and Brandy Younger just commented, and some other people who are regular viewers.
Hey,
hey Brandy.
a lot of friends I tend to see commenting on these things. So we'll see your comments, and I'll take them into account. Marlene, what you're speaking to is the creativity that needs to happen in this time, and the dichotomy that we're facing, right? It's a terrible situation with people getting sick and people dying and us having to isolate, but at the same time there are opportunities to expand our own self and our own life state in a way that is, and this is just from my dialogues with people, in a way that we wouldn't have done before, getting more introspective, learning more about ourselves, maybe learning more about music and about our instrument. Buster had mentioned earlier the creative improvisation. It expands not only to our music, but it expands to our lives. I'm a little curious if anybody has any specific sort of revelations that they've come to in this period, or things that this period has done that have made us like hone in and discover something new about our existence in the first place. I mean, I know I have, but I'm more interested in you guys and what you're discovering in this period.
Well, Revelation, revelations run amok. You know, I mean, I have to really, and some things I just can't share with everybody. It's about me really dealing with me, and I have to be. I'm trying to sort of reschedule myself so that. Netflix doesn't become, my enemy.
Right.
I mean, Netflix got some beautiful stuff on it, man, and I can just sit there, till 4:00 in the morning, just, what do you call it when you look at one thing after another?
Mm-hmm.
Binging.
Oh, binging.
Now, Buster, do you feel like that informs your creativity at all when you watch Netflix series that are really beautiful like that?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. It says, get up from the chair.
Okay.
Go up into that room. If you don't know what you're going to, just sit there. Go up in that room and close the door. Because I have so much to do. And, but that's, that's exciting too, because I look forward to the day that I can really face and do all of these things that I know I got to do. So, so Revelations is really about being honest with yourself. And I must say that I'm really enjoying this time because, I have to laugh at myself and smack myself on the hand, and you know better than that. Get up there and do what you got to do. I mean, it's about improvement. It's about creating improvement, in every area of my life, and not being able to hide behind excuses anymore.
That's deep,
Okay.
man.
Michael? Oh, Michael? New perspectives on playing at this time. Oh, he's muted.
I don't know why it doesn't let people unmute themselves after they mute themselves. Mike, I'm going to try unmuting you here. There. Okay,
Cool.
You're good.
Thanks.
He's
Yeah.
good.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as Buster said, it's like, you know, being alone for so long, and being out of our normal kind of daily experiences changes a lot, and probably we can talk about a lot of different elements of that. But for me, I've found that this is like, it's almost like a second chance at college. For me, it's like the only time that I've had a daily routine in my life since I dropped out of school, which was like, 14, 15 years ago. I like got a sheet of paper and wrote down a routine, and I followed it, more or less every day for now 53 days or something. And it's incredible just what doing the same thing every day does for you. Like, even if it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes of an exercise or Duolingo or whatever, like how much that, just doing it consistently, how much that helps. And so I'm going to try to bring that knowledge, into my new normal life of like trying to really have a routine as best I can and being consistent. And I mean, I haven't practiced really in probably 15 years, until this, and like spending 4 hours a day practicing, and it's awesome. It's great, and it's humbling because it's like, wow, I realize my time sucks. Who thought? Like actually I'm not, some of my fundamentals are not as there as I thought they were, because I've been playing with people over the last 15 years, but now I'm sitting in a room by myself with a new instrument, like trying to, I don't have like the comfort of the bass there to pad my musical experience. I'm like, really, my vulnerabilities are like way out front. It's fun, and it's fun getting your butt kicked. It's great.
I just want to point out, because I did an episode with you, Mike, like just recently, where we fully focused on you, and I just want to point out to everybody listening, when he's talking about, like, I mean, you're learning Duolingo, you're learning Catalan. Was that the language? Mm-hmm. And so learning a new language, learning several new instruments. What was the name of the really cool bass-looking instrument?
It's called Gimbri. It's a Moroccan. It's like it's the ancestor to the instrument that we all play. It's like thousands of years old. It's 3 strings. You can see there on the bridge. One of the strings is a drone, so you never actually finger it. So you're really just fingering 2 strings, and it has the high drone actually, rather than a low drone string. It's tune-wise and formation-wise, it's a lot like the Mali and Ngoni. But the right hand technique's totally different. You have to have like a wicked nail to play it, which is not good for playing electric basses.
Oh, how interesting.
And it's really cool. It's great. I mean, it's for me, it's been an opportunity to go back and, like, when we teach people bass or whatever, we say go back to Jamerson. When we're teaching electric bass, or when we teach acoustic bass, like Jimmy Blanton or what, But like, there's a bass tradition that goes, God knows how far back it goes. So it's really fun to kind of look at it from a different continent and get your butt kicked. I mean, it's really kicked my ass, like totally, like, just really laying all my weaknesses out there on the table, which has been really fun. But for everybody in this chat, I would really recommend at one point messing around with it, just to if for no other reason, to see what our bass was before it was the bass that we have, and of course there were others before it, but it's fun. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
What's it called?
And
Gimbri, Guimbre, or BRI, or Sintir. Also, it has like a bunch of names.
Okay.
Here, I just put that in the chats, so that'll show up now, so people can actually see how it's spelled if they want to check out the instrument. I was just fascinated when you played that on the previous show.
And Mr. Carter.
Well, you know, speaking of strange instruments, I had a concert set for June with a person in Japan that playing a shamisen.
Oh.
And he is the person who was well renowned in Japan for being the master of this instrument. We had a concert set up at a couple of concert halls in Japan in April that are now gone bye-bye. And he let me play it a couple of times, and it's like playing a 3-string guitar with no guitar. He really played it well, so I understand the feeling of that kind of strangeness. You know, my concerns have not so much focused on me as a musician. I've been so concerned with these teachers who I've talked to through this bass consortium who've been teaching bass online for 10, 12 years. And that seems just so far removed from me insisting that if I can't see you eyeball to eyeball, we can't get this done, you know, and clearly we can't see eyeball to eyeball like this. So I'm having a hard time dealing with accepting what that means as a teacher. How limiting I feel as a teacher, you know. And the other thing is almost overwhelmed, that is that the death count. I just have to stop my day and just kind of, I can't go past that, you know, that this is not the first time it's happened. There have been other times way before our time, you know, but to see the death count going up by hundreds, you know, it's hard to equate that with being in these days and times, given all the advances we have made theoretically and medically and physically and scientifically. I mean, how can we let this get this? How can we let this get this? How can we continue to let this situation go on? And it just overwhelms me. I just have to just stop. And my wife tells me just sit down for a moment because it's taking me too far out, and it is, you know. But so I see a lot of people watch the news 10 minutes a day, because after a while it's just you know, it's more than the mind.
Yeah, I've had to stop.
It's more than my mind can bear.
Totally.
You know, and it's difficult to get past that for me and look at the selfish satisfaction of playing the bass again. You know, it just seems so out of balance with what's really going on around the world outside of my room, outside of my head. So I'm having a tough time dealing with that. Having said that, I have increased my practice from 6 minutes a day to 10 minutes every 2 days. And I'm
Oh, man. I mean, could you expand on that a little bit, Ron, for us? I'm genuinely curious, because you have some people who are like, yeah, you need to increase your practice and get deeper and deeper into it, and then you have some people that are like, I mean, this is something from your school of thought that Herbie has a very similar mentality that he said to me about how you think about what makes you better as in your music, and it has less to do with the scales that you're doing and more to do with completely other things in life that might be a little more counterintuitive to somebody who's come up in the academic system. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have to have Herbert talk to me about a little more detail than you just kind of ran over his phrase. Just to understand. But wait. We all here in this 1, 2, 3, 4 in this 7-panel screen understand how important it is to get better by playing with other people. That's part of what we do to mix other people, part of our necessary growth. And since right now it really isn't possible, I don't care how clear they get this mixing about 3 days per measure. You know, I'm not sure they're gonna ever get to where it's like being able to hit you with my elbow or stomp on your foot when you get on the wrong beat or say bridge. That kind of stuff. I'm not sure how they'll get to those basic fundamental things.
Yeah.
So I'm looking more, it seems to me what this 3 months off has made me do is look around and see how important other people's feelings are, how other people's emotions are affected by this unpleasantness that they're forced to face on a daily and hourly basis. You know, my escape, and I say me just to exclude everybody else, my escape is Junius to play the bass. We got some gigs. I can put all this terrible stuff aside until I get back home and the gig is over. I can focus my interest not just on how did I play, did I help these people I'm playing with get better because I'm standing there. That's part of the relief of the gigs for me. But when I don't have this option that helps me not look so focused around my environment that is part of on gigs. There's stuff going on out here that either I've deliberately shut off, I've learned to let it not be such a focus in my view. It is no longer my rearview mirror. It's on my windscreen. And this closeness of these events that are going on hourly has just stopped me in my tracks, you know, and I'm having a difficult time getting a different kind of balance. Not a better, just a different kind of balance to allow me to be in a different community of musicians, for example, than being in the community of permanent mourners. That's where I feel I am right now. I'm mourning every day for people. Strangers, my friends are dying like, I can't believe all my friends are gone. And we're still in the stage of not reaching the peak, the curve top. We're not at the top of the curve yet. And I hate to open the papers and find out, Jesus Christ, who do I love anymore? Who do I love now who's not here for me to love anymore? I've kind of let that take over my weeks, and I'm trying to put that in maybe more lowercase letters than they are right now, and get the guys and gals who I depend on helping me improve back on magnifying glass.
Greg, do you want to, I don't know if you saw what I just sent you?
Oh, did you? Oh yeah, time for a break. Well, yes, we want to give everybody a couple minutes to have a little breather.
Yeah, just a couple. No, not at all.
After that.
I mean, that was, man, yeah, Ron. Oof.
Yeah, that was. Whew.
That was deep. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Up and down too, man. If I stand up, it really gets deep. You know?
Oh, you haven't reached down yet. Okay. Oh my.
Yeah, Cheryl, why don't you?
So, Greg, did you want to?
I will. Oh, but play a little. You want us to? Yeah, play a little music. I'll do that. I'll.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna play something that Junius. This is from the upcoming Chicago experiment, which will be on Rope-A-Dope Records, and it has Mackay McCraven, Joel Ross, Marquise Hill, Daryl Jones, who might actually join us in a little bit, and did I say Jeff Parker? I think I did, and then me. It's my project that I'm releasing next year. This is called The Chant. I got to get Junius on this too, all the Chicago homies. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. This will just be a few minutes of this playing. Everybody can take a second, and we'll be right back.
Hey. Coffee time.
Coffee time.
Or mushroom. What is that?
Mushroom cocoa.
Mushroom cocoa. I gotta check that out.
Taking a little breather here, letting everybody cool down. Man, Ron was dropping some wisdom there. Whew. And for the participants, don't worry, I have you all muted. Yeah, this is the Chicago experiment coming out next year, probably, maybe this year, if you guys really want it. By the way, I'm watching all the comments here. We are, so if you go to, I guess it's actually my Facebook, where the comments are appearing. This technology is still in its infancy, but facebook.com/Greg Spero, and if you type comments there, I should be able to see your comments on the screen, and I will read some of them to the panel when we come back. incredible panel. Bass legends, Ron Carter, needs no introduction, Buster Williams, Marlene Rosenberg, Junius Paul, Michael League. I think we might have Daryl Jones joining us in a little bit. He said if he wakes up, he's going to come in. I'm going to bring Cheryl back over here. Hope you've enjoyed this little musical interlude. That is Marquise Hill killing it on the trumpet in that track. And Joel Ross on the vibes, who we all know and love. Cats from Chicago. I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to unmute everybody here real quick. Unmute all. All right. I think we got everybody back.
Yeah, hey, back. And I'm Cheryl Kay here in upstate New York. I'm co-hosting with Morning with Greg. And what I'd like to do really quickly, just to talk about folks, just to say, you know, your latest project. For instance, Marlene, your latest project, is it on Origin Records? MLK Convergence?
Marlene,
okay, I can't hear anything.
I couldn't hear Marlene just there, but she's not on mute, so we should be able to get her. Marlene, say something.
Okay.
Pause this track here too.
Can't hear her.
No Marlene,
okay.
But she's.
And Ron and Buster are still muted.
Oh, here, I'm muting.
Okay, and now just Buster.
I don't know why this unmute function. Buster, I think you got to unmute yourself. There it is. Yep. Okay.
So
we
Marlene, can we hear you? Okay, we still can't hear Marlene. I'm going to go to Michael while we're working with Marlene. So Michael, your latest release, is it, let's see, What Heat?
Yeah.
And that's with the group Bocante and Metropole Orchestra. That came out like what, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I think my other band, which is called Snarky Puppy, released something after that, but they both came out at roughly the same time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Mr. Williams, your last release, what was it?
It's called Audacity. It's on Smoke Sessions.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Carter, let's see, your last release. Let's see, you had...
Called Foresight with Jimmy Green, Irene Rosnes, and Peyton Crossley. A special project that was done on vinyl with 180 degree vinyl. Vinyl about a 1/4-inch thick, limited pressing, and it's a fantastically sounding record.
Marlene, are you with us? Okay, we're still working on Marlene, so
I am
let's
having
go
Marlene log out and come back in.
Okay, Junius, your latest release. It's Ism, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that was released November of last year, and it's on International Anthem Recording Company. That's the label, Chicago-based, and I have a list of people on the album. Some of the names are Mekhi McCraven, Marquise Hill, Tamika Reed, also trying to think of Scott Hesse, Vincent Davis, Corey Wilkes, Justin Dillard, to name a few, and I've got a few more on the album as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, how's Marlene doing?
She's not back yet. I think she had a little connection issue, so she'll be back soon.
All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you this question, give me one answer, and then it'll fold into the next question. So here's the question. Was the bass your first instrument, Mr. Carter? Yes or no?
No.
Michael?
No.
Buster?
No.
Junius?
No.
No. Okay.
Well.
Interesting, right? Yeah. And what it folds into is I was watching a Q&A with Geddy Lee. the front man for the Canadian rock group Rush. And he was talking with the co-author of his new book that's out. It's called Big Beautiful Book of Bass. But Geddy Lee, he spent years collecting vintage basses, and that passion fueled, the inspiration for this book. And this is interesting what he said, his quote: "In that moment, I realized how little I knew about the instrument that I had held in my hands for 42 years. I knew very little about its evolution. I knew very little about the people who made it, why they made them out of the material that they made out of it, etc. So my question to this panel is, what did you know about the bass before you started playing it?" For me, I will just say this: I did play electric bass when I was in high school, but I'll go back to my French horn experience. I was a violinist at the time, and the band director, basically grabbed me by the collar in the hall and said, "Would you like to play French horn?" And before I knew it, I said yes. But what I should have asked is, well, what's a French horn? I knew nothing about the instrument, but there I went into it, and I got to know the instrument. I knew nothing about it before I started playing it. So, who'd like to tackle it? Who's first?
Is Marlene on?
I'm back.
Yeah, Marlene's back.
All right.
We got her.
Marlene.
Hey, Marlene.
Hey.
It's good to be back. Thank you for the
Welcome.
positive vibes. Nothing like technology. Okay.
All right. Do you want to go with that, Marlene?
What am I going with? I'm sorry, I came in halfway through the question.
Okay, let me go to someone else, and then you'll hear it. So let's go with, I don't know, Michael, I'm looking right at you. What did you know about the bass before you started playing it?
Very little. I was 17 or 18, and I was one of 3 electric guitarists in my, crappy high school jazz ensemble class. And there were no bass players, so I think, what happens with a lot of bass players happened with me, which is you take the worst guitar player in the band and you give him a bass. So that's how I started. And I didn't
true.
I didn't really know. I didn't really know anything about it. I mean, it was like a Squier jazz bass that was sitting in the marching band uniform closet for probably a decade, and I took it home and yeah, I just kind of fell in love with it pretty quickly. Really, actually, within like a week, I was like, I don't want to play guitar anymore. It spoke to me, but I didn't learn about like the stuff that Geddy's talking about the history of Fender and all this kind of stuff. I didn't really learn about that until I was probably in my mid to late 20s. It took a long time for me to actually like kind of learn the history of the thing I was playing.
Marlene, you want to go with that?
Sure. Well, let's see. I was a clarinet player, so that was my instrument, and actually, that's how I got into college with scholarships as a clarinetist. And the last year of high school, I heard jazz, and I wanted to play in jazz, and they needed a bass player, so he handed me the electric bass, and that was the short story. And then when I got to university at U of I in Champaign-Urbana, about year 2, I converted, sold my clarinet for the rent, and became a bass player. I just loved it.
All right. Buster.
Well, my first attempt to play any music was on the piano. No, actually it was the drums. My father played drums, he played piano, but his main instrument was the bass. And so I used to watch my father do what he did. And many times his musician friends were over at the house and they would be playing, and I just knew I wanted to do what he did. So I liked the drums because they made the most noise. And so I started there. But I was discouraged from the very beginning, because when I told my father I wanted to play the drums, he ran upstairs and came back downstairs with two sticks and this thing he called a practice pad. And I looked at that and I said, no, you misunderstand me. I want to play drums. And he put these two sticks in my hand and he said, well, this is what you have to do first. And he said, blap, 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 blap. And then he said, mama, daddy, mama, daddy. I said, oh my goodness, this is just going to be too long. So I did that for a while, and I learned my mama, daddies, and my paradiddles. And he set up a set of drums for me finally, and in the basement. And my mother said I was making too much noise. And then I got interested in the piano, and he taught me how to play two songs. He taught me how to play That Old Feeling and Pennies from Heaven. And I liked the piano, but then the thing that really intrigued me was him playing the bass. And he liked to sit on the sofa and put the bass between his legs and bow the bass. And one of his favorites was Slam Stewart. And he played records for me, of Slam Stewart, and he's singing while he's playing using the bow. And then Oscar Pettiford. So anyway, I decided on playing the bass. Now, I think I knew a little bit about the origins of the bass by the time I got to it, because my father used to talk to me about these things. So, but it was nothing like what happened when I started to try and play the bass. It was the hardest thing that I had ever tried to do, because my father wouldn't let me escape from the pain of it. The pain, that saying, no pain, no gain. He never said that, but that was definitely his way of looking at it. I had to do everything correctly. And it didn't take long before I regretted that I begged him to teach me the bass. And I was stuck. Because it was either, okay, I'm going to play this bass and do what he tells me to do, or he'll kill me. So I stuck with the bass. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not more indebted to him. His insistence really ingrained in me the importance of what I was doing, and the fact that I wouldn't really get that which is there to get out of it until I really did understand the importance of it. So that's my history.
Thank you. Junius?
For me, my first recognizance of the bass was through, and you because bass wasn't my first instrument, piano was my first instrument. My mom was a concert pianist and piano teacher. She was my first piano teacher. And my dad, because we had a piano in the house, he played pretty good by ear. And he was a DJ as well, so there was always like different kinds of records around the house being played and stuff like that. And so I just remember knowing that the bass was there, listening to music as a child, but I was more interested in the piano at that time. And like, as a small child, my parents listened to a lot of Stevie Wonder. And so I got into like the different voicings and characterizations of timbre that Stevie Wonder could like vary with and get into with all the synthesizers and stuff. And I always thought that was really interesting. And one of the things about his music that I knew it at the time, but it was like there was something that always resonated with me was his left-hand bass on his recordings. I always thought it was amazing just because I love Stevie Wonder so much. I was into everything that he was doing. And little did I know that there was a huge influence of his left-hand bass work from James Jamerson. And obviously Motown was a big part of my childhood just from my parents. Obviously I wasn't old enough for that, but through my parents and always playing the Temptations and Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Four Tops, and Gladys Knight and the Pips, Marvin Gaye, little Stevie Wonder, all that stuff. So James Jamerson, Stevie Wonder, and then of course other musicians that you listen to, other bands that you listen to on the radio sitting in my parents' car. All these things would be important to me, and I didn't realize how it would affect me even later. And so when I was in high school, I got into Jimi Hendrix pretty heavy and begged my mother to give me a guitar, which she did. I just turned 15. And from there, that led to me beginning to play bass at the church that we had just joined in '97. The pastor, Reverend Ozzie Smith, he plays saxophone, master saxophonist and bass player as well. And he used to keep a bass in his closet. He had this Stingray, this Music Man Stingray bass, Honer Music Man Stingray. And so he used to just let me mess around with it when I would be there at the church. And those are my beginnings of playing bass. And I started playing bass in Sunday school, electric bass, obviously in Sunday school, like the opening song and the closing song. And that eventually led me to playing for the, regular services. And I'm actually still, when I'm in town, I still play there to this day since 1998. And so those are my beginnings. And then I got into double bass when I was 19, my second year in college. I played electric bass in the jazz band my first year and was still playing in the church. And then my second year, I started studying double bass with Rich Armandi. And bass has been kicking my butt ever since.
All right. And Mr. Carter.
Well, I started playing cello when I was 11. And I played cello up until my senior semester in high school at Cass Tech in Detroit. And I thought that the school, what the policy was for the schools was to send orchestras of kids to play in the local T's and PTA functions. And I thought that I wasn't getting my share of those calls. And also the bass player in the orchestra was graduating in January of 1955, I guess. So I asked my mom I wanted to play bass because I wanted to play in the orchestra. So I sold my cello and I had 3 or 4 lessons on the bass from the orchestra guy in Detroit, and played bass in the Cass Tech Orchestra from the semester of January through June. The cellist from the Eastman School of Music was doing auditions for the following school year, September of '55, and I found out that they had an audition coming up, so went to the library and got some bass books and figured out what they did to the score, and took the audition and got a 4-year scholarship to Eastman Music. I'm still learning how to play the bass many years later, despite this thing going on now.
All right, so we are about 55 minutes into it. We have Buster Williams, Michael Lee, Vaughn Carter, Junius Paul, Marlene Rosenberg, our host, Greg Spero. I'm Cheryl Kay. Greg, why don't we look at some of the questions?
Yeah, well, so okay, there are a few audience questions I'm going to bring in, but I have a question because it's my show. I get to sort of cut in line and ask some things I'm really curious about that you guys can help inform me on. And let's dig into music itself a little bit. We've talked a good amount about life, but I'm curious from each of your perspectives, or it doesn't actually have to be everybody. If you feel strongly about this, you can answer. But if you had to name one thing that's the most important thing for a bass player of an ensemble to remember, what would it be and why? Ponder on that for a second.
Well, you know, when you say one thing, okay, you can emphasize this one thing, and everybody will agree or not. But then that leads into another thing, and because there's not one thing to me that makes the bass player important, except for the bass player to understand that if he or she does not really understand the purpose or your meaning in being there, then it's not going to work. So I would say that one thing is understanding all the things.
Yes, sir.
I like that.
In A flat, by the way.
At each tempo.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Thanks, Buster. Okay.
I think you shut that down.
Yeah, you got it, man.
That's about it.
That's great. So, okay, wait.
What is that one thing, right?
Yeah. You know, okay. So Buster, since you have the floor, can I dig in a little bit on something else that I think. So there's an experience that I'm curious about that you had. That this is one of the things that Herbie told me about in your experience with him, where essentially. So for those of you who don't know, we a lot of the jazz community practices Buddhism in the vein of SGI, which is a Buddhist organization, and Buster introduced Herbie to this. According to Herbie, Buster, you can refute any of this if you want. In a musical fashion, at a gig, with an incredible display of the potential of mindfulness as it translates into music. Buster, do you know the experience that I'm referring to when I say that?
Yeah, I know.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Herbie talks about it all the time, and this was back in 1972. I had started chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and I was we had the sextet at that time, which eventually became known as Mwandishi, which was never the real name of who we were. It was always the Herbie Hancock Sextet. And I had started chanting, and I wanted to introduce everybody in the band, which eventually I did. And all of my colleagues also. So when you talk about the multitude of musicians who now chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, I was one of the first. I introduced everybody, even Marlene.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
That's true.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so the band, I think we were in Kansas City or Seattle. What was it, Greg? Was it Kansas City or Seattle?
I don't remember. For some reason, I put it in Chicago.
I think it was. It might have been Seattle. Anyway, the band had played the night before, and we had hung out after the gig, and everybody was. I mean, we hung out until like almost to the time of the next night. We get to the gig, and everybody's tired and worn out. And Herbie had a habit of, the first thing he's got to do is tune the electric piano. So, and then regardless of how late we are in starting the set, he's going to take the top off and tune the piano. So the place is packed, and Herbie's tuning the piano. Plus, he's dead tired, and we got to get this thing started. So he looks at me and he says, "Man," he says, "Buster, why don't you start the set?" And we had this tune that Herbie had written called "Toys," and it started with sort of like a bass introduction. Now, unbeknownst to everyone, I was filled with energy because I had chanted before coming to work. So I welcomed the opportunity. So I started playing my introduction, and that band was so creative. I mean, our intention every night was to see how far we can remove ourselves from the night before. So I'm playing and I'm finding all of this stuff that I've been working on, I've been looking for, and surprises that I'm creating for myself. And it sort of like woke everybody up, and the band and the audience. People in the back moved to the front. Everybody in the, Benny Maupin and Julian Priester and Eddie Henderson, they sat down on the floor of the bandstand while I'm playing. And Herbie is, finally put the top back on his piano, and he's looking at me with his mouth hanging open. And anyway, we played a most astounding set. When we finished, people would they wouldn't stop applauding. And they were saying things like they had never heard any music like that. And that some people said they not only heard the music, they felt it. And anyway, we went into the dressing room, and Herbie grabbed me by the shoulders and he shook me. He says, "Man, Buster, what's going on with you?" He said, "I've been noticing there's something happening with you, and I've never heard you play like that." And so I told Herbie, that I've been wanting to tell you this. And I told him about Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And the next night, I took him to some friends' home who I had met, and they chanted, and they had a meeting there with some members, and from there, Herbie and I started chanting together every day. Then I introduced Benny Maupin, and we became like the Three Musketeers. We would chant every morning, and then we started introducing everybody, at every venue that we played, and we'd bring people back to my hotel room, and we'd have a meeting 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe 20 people. But anyway, that's how it all started with Herbie, and that was in 1972.
Oof.
Talking about 48 years ago.
That's amazing. Yeah, when he tells the story, he says when you played the bass, it looked like you couldn't have possibly done everything you did with 2 hands. Like the sounds that were coming out of the bass were beyond the instrument in the way that.
Well, I had 2 hands, but that night each hand had 6 fingers.
Yeah.
And I was actually born with 6 fingers. I had a finger here, and I still got the nub, and a finger here, and I still got the nub.
Are you kidding? Really?
Yeah. So
Oh
I
my
was
God.
born to play the bass.
That's wild. I had no idea. So thank you for telling that story. The idea of mindfulness in music, I mean, we tap into our mindfulness, you and I, through the SGI, and there are so many ways of tapping into mindfulness. And I love that story because I'm going to take just 30 seconds to tell my brief experience with a similar interesting tapping into mindfulness. When I was in Japan with the Miles Electric Band, with Daryl Jones and Vince Wilburn and those cats, we were playing in Tokyo, and I went to visit the Hall of the Great Vow. And when the day that I went to visit it, I had food poisoning from the night before, so I was literally like throwing up the whole time I was trying to go there. And on the bathroom floor of the Hall of the Great Vow, it was like but then went and meditated, chanted, like our form is chanting, and for hours in the Hall of the Great Vow, and then made it back. I had to walk back because I was afraid of vomiting in a cab, and got to the gig, played the gig, and Daryl said that it was the best performance that he had heard me do on that tour, which was like probably 10 or 15 cities. So finding some way to tap into that space in the mind to be fully present is what I've gathered from that. I wonder if any of the other guys here, if you have experiences with mindfulness or your state of mind when playing that you find to be so important and profound, maybe even more so than aspects of technicality.
Well, I'll speak on that a little bit, I guess. And it's pretty simple for me. And I think one of the main things to that simplicity is really trying to remain simple in yourself while you're on stage or while you're in an ensemble setting, or duo setting or solo setting, whatever setting it may be. And it's really just like breathing. And these are things that I've had to learn, because I would have to, in the past, and even now, I mean, it doesn't stop, but you just have tools to deal with it. But like, not overthinking on stage, not trying to overly anticipate things, just really, as you're being the rock and being the foundation of all these things, there's still, like I said, a simplicity that you have to have, a certain calm that you have to have, because that's, to me personally, I can speak on it. That's how I stay mindful and aware of everything else, because, it's like that. And I think just being aware of the energy, not just the notes being played, but aware of the energy of each person, and then the energy of the ensemble, the energy of the stage, the energy of the crowd, just awareness of all of those things. And then you can pick and choose. Once you have that awareness, you can pick and choose what energies that you want to dive into a little bit more in that present moment. Or if there's some things that you may notice that it's like, what, let me like kind of chill on that for a minute. You can do those things, but I think all of that comes from just, if you have to woosah, then woosah or whatever, but just really breathing and keeping, yourself simple on the inside. And that way, I'm most aware. Those are the times when I'm most aware. And I think that's most beneficial to me as a bass player, and beneficial, even more importantly, to the ensemble.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Junius, you are particularly adept at that in my experience playing with you. Whatever goes on in the space of music, that's the one thing that everybody in the ensemble can always count on, is that Junius will be right there and fully present to everything that's going on. I have a question for Ron about that relates to that. So Ron, when I was in high school, I watched there was a bootleg DVD, and I think that it's been put out on audio since then, but there was a bootleg recording of you with the Miles Quintet, and I think it was there were two cities, Sweden and something else, I think, or maybe it was Switzerland, and the it's you with Tony Williams and Wayne Shorter and Herbie and Miles. And when I first listened to it, your interactions were so, like, you went into so many different places, but completely perfectly together, seemingly, that I didn't even understand it when I first listened to it. And I listened to it every single night for 6 months, the hour-long bootleg. And by the end of the 6 months, I was completely enthralled and following what was going on, and could actually understand. And it to this day is one of the most profound and connected recordings that I've ever discovered in my life. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to your state of mind and state of being when you had that experience or those experiences in the Miles Quintet.
Okay, well, you're going back how far?
I think it was in the 60s. I think it was late 60s.
Okay, as you know, that there's no way I can really tell you what that was like back at that specific issue of that thing you saw.
Of course.
Okay, just kind of clear that off off your expectation list for a moment.
Sure.
I always get this question in various formats and various forms from various interviewers about that same kind of impression they got of that band. And I try to explain it in a not so complicated fashion, in that my view is that group was, we were all scientists. And we were all experimenters with this stuff called music. And every night Miles would come to the laboratory to plug nickel, Vanguard, wherever it was. And he had this in his bag, these various chemicals. They were different from night to night. But they're all in the same vial. We couldn't tell what had been changed. And his job for us was to take these chemicals, whatever we decided would fit at any given moment, and hopefully the results would be positive, whatever that meant back at the time. During these experiments, someone had to be in charge. Someone had to say, guys, stop. More of this, less of that. Not that again, we're not doing that this evening, guys. And this is something, Miles was not that guy. I was that guy. They began to trust my judgment, so that I was kind of the guy who made those decisions for all of us. Given the 5 years that we were together, I'm sure I got it wrong once, maybe 20 minutes wrong, but for the other times, I was nailing it. And they understood my judgment. If I decided we were the top, I didn't care where they were, man. We're all in Detroit, and here's one, MFs. Let's get this stuff up. And they trusted my judgment. What that made me do was be really inside the music. Not inside them, inside what the music was at that point. And how can I persuade these guys by my choice of notes, my choice of rhythm, my choice of volume, that we should probably go this way. And if you don't go that way, we meet at the bridge. And we've been there for 5 years or so. Great times.
Wow. Man, well, thank you for that. That is, it's something that.
What? Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
One day, my phone rang, and it was Ron. And Ron asked me to bring my bass and to his house. I think tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. And I said, okay. So I got off the phone. I said, now what the hell? Why does Ron want me to come to his house 3 o'clock tomorrow with my bass? And so I got there, and there was, I think it was Larry Willis, and was it Larry or Kenny Barron? Ron?
Kenny Barron.
It was Kenny Barron, Ben Rowley, and me. And Ron went into one of his bass closets and came out with this little teeny bass. And he called it a piccolo bass. And we started playing. And that was the beginning of my 5 years with the Ron Carter Quartet. And I must say, it was the most rewarding 5 years that I ever spent with the band. And I had the privilege of watching Ron every night, striving to relate to Ron, and I never forget, Ron, we had a conversation, and he said one thing to me. He said, you know, our job is to create problems for ourselves and solve them.
Mm.
He says, if you're not creating any problems for yourself, you ain't going nowhere.
Oof.
And I learned from Ron the real importance of a precisioned mind. There's not a single note that Ron plays that he didn't mean to play. You know, if he didn't mean to play that note, you'll never know it, because the next note will make that note that he played make even more sense than you thought it had.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was incumbent upon me to have a presence and a sense of the moment that I never understood before that. And so we stayed together for 5 years, and you know, it was a mentorship that that I got from nowhere else. And I saw and I felt and I gleaned and I inculcated the intensity that Ron puts forth in every single moment.
Mm.
And it made me a much better bass player by being with Ron that time. And also we became, you know, very good friends to this day. You know, I love him dearly. And it's the kind of thing that grows.
Mm.
So I can say that.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Buster.
Moving.
Thank you, Buster.
Yeah.
I don't-
Greg, did you want to, we've got about, what, 10, 15 minutes? You want to take a couple of questions
Oof,
from
yeah.
our...
Yeah, I will. I'm just processing that. I've written down some questions, but oh my
Oh, cool.
Lord. And I want to say how just to have all of you amazing artists on here in this setting, I feel so grateful and so privileged to be able to have you dialoguing like this. I'm so happy that I'm recording this right now, because there are quotes that I'm going to write down and put in my journal and read every day from this conversation. I want to so okay, just one other thing before I ask audience questions, because what you said relates right to something Ron said about the challenges of teaching right now, because the thing that all of the things that you were describing, Buster, in your being mentored and learning from Ron's mentality, it all relates to something that is sort of intangible. You can't point to exactly what it is, but it's something that is exchanged from human to human in the same room, in the same environment, through the interaction that's happening. And being in the situation that we are right now, and we don't know exactly how long it's going to be that we need to be in this situation, that Ron, that goes back to something you said earlier about how challenging it is to teach when you're not able to do those things. Is that what Buster described? Is that what you sort of try to instill in your students, and why it's so challenging now?
Me or Buster?
Ron,
Well, I think the physical presence is a really overwhelming place to be in when you're trying to help someone get better.
Mm.
You have to walk around them, literally.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pick up the small things that are in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Is the bass too high? Is the angle too wrong? Are the strings too high? Is the fingerboard dirty? Are you being careless with how you hold the bass? Just this real personal details that you can only see if you take off the hood and find out what the fuck the motor's doing.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't turn the key and go, no, you got to take it to the checkup. I tell my students it's time for a $5,000 checkup. I want them to come to my house so I can see how they progress without me on their case for a year or whatever that time span is. And have them bring a notebook and a pencil, because I don't believe in having them record the lessons, and write down what I'm asking them to be more aware of. Take these things as recommendations. If I see them do, and if I see you do them again, you didn't believe me. They're all my friends. We talk about kind of and a parental child kind of conversation. But I think what I miss is being able to do this to them. I can only do it with my words. And right now, I'm so exhausted on lunch, I'm talking louder to them. I keep saying the same thing over because they don't quite get it the first time I say it.
Yeah.
So after teaching 4 lessons, when I have to take a nap, take my milk and cookies and lie down for about an hour.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, the audio fidelity and the way that we interact through video, it's improving pretty rapidly now that it has to. But we have such a long way to go to even be able to gradually. I could see you like walking around a 3D model of a person if you can capture them in 3D, and that still not being good enough because that energy exchange. It's something very special and profound that you can only get person to person. There was a question I want to transition into actually asking a couple audience questions. One, somebody said, acoustic versus electric, what makes it funky? I'm curious that you could take that in several different ways. But does anybody have any specific thoughts on acoustic versus electric and how to make it funky?
Oh. I don't know. The feeling. I mean, it comes from the person, from the bassist, from the musician. What makes it funky? I mean, there's technical aspects of one versus the other, right? But okay, that's my short answer. Is that the one thing?
I don't have a preference. Bass is bass, and it comes from, like I was talking about when I was a kid, listening to Stevie Wonder's bass lines. It's like I wasn't concerned about whether it was coming from a Fender or from, $100,000 double bass. It was just sounded good, and so I mean, yeah, and it's like for me, my influences just like as far as bass just come from like different bass frequencies or instruments. I mean, obviously with that, there's so many bass players, like of course Mr. Carter and Mr. Williams. You guys are both huge influences on my sound. But yeah, I mean, bass is bass, and so I try not to put a preference on the electric versus the upright. I don't really I don't put a verses to it. It's just like one is one and the other is the other, because they also require different physical approaches, and with the styles of music that you're playing with each of them, they can require different approaches also, And I mean, to make it funky, your funk depends on it's your story. Like, if you listen to a lot of different electric bass players, it's like a lot of them don't all, if you notice, they all don't have the same like type of funk. You got the Bootsy funk, you got the Louis Johnson funk, you got all these different styles, Larry Graham, and the list goes on and on and on. But it's like that's their form of funk and where they come from and their life story. That kind of goes, to me, that goes into your funk, along with the influences that you had, from other bases, But a lot of it is your story.
Yeah.
All right.
Anybody else?
Well, if nobody else has an Buster, were you going to say something?
No, I'm saying that Junius, he's right on.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So we can go on to another question here. Here's a question that says, what is the worst thing you see a lot of bassists doing, and how do you fix it?
Ooh.
Good question. Good question.
The one worst?
We have a lot of ones here. Sorry, I know it's never actually fully true.
I'll take a chance.
All right.
Playing with no amp.
What do you mean? Can you expound on that a little bit, Mr. Carter?
Well, if you can't hear him, what's he doing up there?
There it is.
There it is.
I tell my students I want my grandmother, who sits in row Z12, with one hearing aid not working, to hear every note I'm trying to play to help the band sound good.
Right.
And I can't imagine a non-amplified bass player, whatever gear he's using, having that kind of effect on the total house. Now, there are people who don't feel like that, and I feel sorry for them because they're missing the point of satisfying everyone's needs to hear the bass.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
I totally agree. You know, and the sad thing is, too many times when you do hear the bass, you didn't know that, you know, you were well off when you didn't hear it. You know, it bothers me, you know, to no end, you know, when I hear a bass player that doesn't know how to connect beat 4 with beat 1. The note that you choose on beat 4, you know, it's got to be the note that's going to take you to beat 1. And sometimes it's just like a random, you know, no one understands the importance of that. That note takes you to this note. This note takes you to that note. You know? And understanding that is not a limitation, because it's you know, it's unlimited. You know? But it's about relationship.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, that. Again, I want to let that sink in a little bit, because what you're talking about, Buster, is you're talking about the expansiveness of music and what makes music great, and it's not the individualized silos of any moment in time. It's the whole, the expansiveness, the interconnectedness of all things. From my perspective, that expands out to not just even the notes themselves, like all the nuances that you're putting into the note and connecting with those around it, but then yourself and the band members and the audience members and the world and the state of being of existence as a whole, the reality that we all share, and that's something that each one of you on this panel that I admire about your playing. Whether I've played directly with you or not, but it's an understanding and an expounding of that oneness.
I'd like to just say one thing as someone who used to be a player, used to be a teacher, always a student of the music. It was always for me posture, and it was breathing. And I don't know if you have more trouble with the kids or the adults as far as hand positioning, standing up straight. I was a violinist. My violin teacher was a taskmaster when it came to posture. And every instrument I played after that, I always remembered about posture, because it really does affect everything else. It affects your focus. It affects your thinking. I mean, if you've got tired feet, aching knees, you know, when I was in college, there were bass players, they were like, you know, they were hunched over. And it's like, well, someone didn't tell them this as young players. So as teachers yourselves, is posture more of a problem with the kids or with the adults?
You know, it's easier to teach someone who hasn't been doing something wrong than it is for someone who's been doing something wrong for such a long time. You know, so for the person that's doing it for the first time, okay, this is new information. So you only have to deal with that. But for the person who's been doing it wrong for whatever amount of time, you got an added issue. You got to remove the habit and replace it with something else. So that's why, you know, I try and instill in my students, you know, don't look for the easy way to do it. Let's look for the best way to do it, for the way that's going to have, you know, allow for the most endurance, you know, and let this, you know, let this first step be the step of, you know, the 1,000-mile journey, then, you know, a step that's going to at some point lead you to, you know, what do you call it? That impasse or that point where you stand, you know, and I can't, and the past doesn't even exist anymore. You can't go back there and start over.
Right.
Well, let's try and do it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And also, if I can say a little something that I think as we also, if you learn from a young age, like I started learning the double bass in college, and after I graduated, you know, I would study people on the internet, or, you know, you see bass players in person at different shows and things, but it's also easy if you don't check it to develop bad habits. You can learn things the right way, and then you have to monitor yourself as time goes on so that you don't develop bad habits and then stick with those, because you start becoming comfortable with your bad habits. And I've been blessed to have one of my bass teachers is Cheryl to help break, like I met him some years ago, but like I started studying with him pretty seriously every time I come to New York, like in my maybe mid 30s. I'm 37, so like maybe around 33, 34. And he's had to break a lot of bad habits that I developed over the years, just over that time in my 20s and 30s, like things happen. So it's like also a matter of like not just learning those things, but, you know, making sure that you're keeping yourself in check to maintain those things, because you'll develop bad habits over time. And like I say, not even, a lot of times you won't even know it or realize it. And then it takes some breaking to do. And then it's a matter of the student, even if it's an adult at that time, to, you know, whether they have the fortitude and the perseverance to break those things, because that takes time. Breaking habits takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know we're going to be ending pretty soon because it's a little past 9:30 right now, and I know everybody has things to do, but I wanted to just bring up the opportunity to each person, if there's something that's unrelated to anything that we've said so far in this, is it because we have a lot of people are watching right now, and a lot of them are bass players, and a lot of them are artists of other forms. Is there anything that you want to tell people before we go? I've opened the floor to anybody.
Can I, you know, because I was having trouble with technology. Mm-hmm. If I could mention the CD, I don't know if you guys,
please.
Yeah. The MLK Convergence, mm-hmm. Which has Kenny Barron, Lewis Nash, and Christian McBride on it, and it was such an honor to work with them. The process was, they were immensely, I'm immensely thankful, and they were incredibly loving throughout the whole project. And for me, it was really a convergence of time past and present, and the ability to connect again, which is, as a bass player, my favorite thing to do, is to connect musically. with people and have that relationship, which we've been talking about with people. And of course, being apart physically makes that difficult. So I don't know. I just wanted to mention that, how thankful I am to do projects like that, how much I'm looking forward to more of those relationships musically and physically, personally. I do feel like even in all the things that are going on that are very tragic in our world, and the frustration and the anger I feel from a lot of the things that are going on, I still feel that I hope we're hope, and I believe we'll come out more positively connected globally to people, and with new insights in music, because we are forced to stop. I think that's a good thing, quite frankly.
I agree.
But Buster, Ron, Mike, Junius, you guys all good? No other
I got to go, but before I leave, my word to the bass players who are listening and watching. A quarter note is still a great friend of yours. Thanks.
Indeed.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
For being here.
Thank you, Ron.
Don't eat all those Fig Newtons at once.
Yes.
Talk soon, Mr. Carter. Talk
Please.
soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl, that's probably a good time to close it up, yeah?
Okay.
I think so. So, to everyone, to Buster, to Marlene, to Michael, to Junius, thank you for joining us on Mornings with Greg, Spero. This is really been a great honor for me. This is my first time being seen. I'm sorry to everyone, but here I am. But yeah, this has been great. I'm Cheryl Kay. I'm at WGXC in Hudson, New York. Our website is WGXC.org. And Greg, if you don't mind, if people could just say their websites. Marlene, what's your website? If people want to get to know you, where do they find you?
Thank you. www.marlenerosenberg.com or marlenemusic.com. Either one will get you to me. Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. Yeah. Greg and Cheryl, thank you for having me. And us. Yes.
Michael, how do we find you?
I don't have a website.
Oh, come on, man.
But I guess my bands do. So you can go to snarkypuppy.com or bocante.com.
Okay. Junius, you know I'm going to be getting in touch with you for those leggings, so.
Come with it. You can find me at www.juniuspaulmusic.com, and that's the same handle for all of my social media at Junius Paul Music and Junius Paul on Facebook.
Great, thank you. Buster Williams.
www.busterwilliams.com.
Great.
Or look through the entire history of bass and just find him on all of it.
Right, exactly.
And Greg, where do we find you? Any other places we can find you?
Well,
besides here,
my band is Spirit Fingers, so spiritfingers.live, and then gregspero.com is and on Facebook and the internet. I hear on Mornings with Greg every 3 days a week now. I was doing it every morning, but now it's 3 days a week, and I'll put the schedule up on gregspero.live.
Okay. And those looking for Ron Carter, it's roncarter.com.
All right. Well, Cheryl Simister Masterson, thank you so much.
Oh, sure.
I really appreciate you being here. Thank you to Jazz Times for cross-posting us, and Bass Player Magazine for sharing the stream. I cannot understate my gratitude for having you on here to share this with me and with the rest of the bass and music community at large. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Greg, thank you, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
Everyone take care.
You too.
You too.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Looking forward.
Woo woo! All right. So. Oh. My God. I'm so happy. Like I said before, I'm so happy I recorded that because I'm going to dissect these quotes from some of the masters that we just talked with and write them down and use them in my daily affirmations. And you know what Ron said about remember a quarter note is still your friend, that applies to pianists too. Like this is, yeah. By the way, I'll often be playing here. I'm not gonna actually play you a song right now because, geez, that was just too inspiring of a dialogue. So this will be a dialogue episode. I would like you to come back. I'll be hosting more of these panels. There are a few people who wanted to do this and couldn't, and we'll have them on in a future panel. So stay tuned. Come back to gregspero.live, and if you want to be so kind as to visit our sponsor for the episode, which is my band, Spirit Fingers. It won't be my band all the time, I promise, but at spiritfingers.live, which is the address right there, there are 50 signed vinyls, limited edition, only 50 available of these signed vinyls that you can go and buy there. For the viewers of this episode, they will only be on that link for as long as they last. Whew. I may have to replay this stream at some point because, man. Yeah. Thank you to WGXC Radio, Cheryl Simister Masterson, for co-hosting with us. Thank you for all the people who supported making this episode happen. Ron Carter, Buster Williams, Marlene Rosenberg, Junius Paul, and Michael League. A lot of learning and a lot of wisdom was just dropped, so I'll leave this online for a while so you can go back and grab some of these quotes like I'm going to do. So until next time, I will bid you farewell with some music. And this music will be from the upcoming Chicago Experiment with Micaiah McCraven, Daryl Jones, Joel Ross, Marquise Hill, Jeff Parker, Irvin Pierce, and then I'm going to record Junius on it and some overdubs. So for those of you who love Junius, that will be the case on here. I'm going to give you a track that sort of reflects how I'm feeling right now after this, which is at peace with a little bit of funk. Hope you enjoy Double Take. See you guys next time. I love you all very much. Thank you again. Talk to you soon. Bye. Wait, hey, let me call you back in a second. Sorry, one sec. Hey, everybody. It looks like our computer playing audio seems to have chilled out for some reason. That's an interesting glitch that I have not seen before. So those of you watching right now, you have just watched Mornings with Greg with the bass player panel, and luckily and thank God, no audio glitches like this happened in the actual recording, in the actual episode. But we're gonna just go back and press this button here to give you more music. There it is. That's what's the problem.